I'm sorry.
Shantideva says, if all the injury, fear and pain in this world arise from grasping at a self, then what use is that great ghost to me? If I do not completely forsake it, I shall be unable to put an end to suffering, just as I cannot avoid being burned if I do not cast aside the fire that she's holding. So the main problem is our grasping at an ego. But as I said this morning, merely saying, okay, I'm not going to grasp at an ego, who is saying that? The ego. You know, so the ego is saying, oh, there is no ego. Doesn't solve the ego problem. Just as bashing up our ego and saying, you're a bad, bad ego and you're causing all my problems and all the problems in the world, all bad ego, naughty, naughty, and bashing ourselves doesn't solve the problem. The only way to overcome the ego is through genuine insight into the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind, we naturally realize that there is no place there for I and other. Beyond that, we use our sense of self, which we all possess, in order, as I said, to walk the path towards non-self. But merely intellectually understanding that is not the same as genuine realization, which shifts the whole consciousness. There's an inner shift from ego-driven consciousness to consciousness beyond that duality of self and other, subject and object. That's why we meditate, in order to recognize that level of our awareness, of our consciousness, which we all possess. We don't have to create it, we've got it already. The problem is we don't see it. We don't recognize it because it's covered over by the clouds of our conceptual thinking mind. And we can't see. But just as clouds could not exist if there were not the sky, likewise our ordinary conceptual thinking could not exist if there was not this primordial awareness behind it all. So we need to rediscover who we truly are. But it doesn't happen just by beating ourselves up and telling ourselves that we must be egoless, because, just saying, right, from now on I'm not going to think about my ego. Who is saying that? The ego is now going to be egoless. It doesn't work. So first we have to get ourselves motivated properly with really beginning to understand how to look on others at first as being really much more interesting and important than merely always thinking about me. That's the first stage. That we recognize that there is all these other beings who are equally precious and who, if we really want to understand, we need to reach out to and open our eyes to see all these beings. And as the Buddha said, to each one their own self is most dear. Everybody is the center of their own universe. And so therefore, just as we think we're so precious, or at least important, even if we don't like ourselves, everybody's thinking the same way. So, therefore, now he's going to start putting himself in different positions, playing different roles, to see how each one feels. Therefore, in order to allay the harms inflicted upon me, and in order to pacify the sufferings of others, I should give myself up to others and cherish them as I do my very self. I am under the control of others. Of this mind, you must be certain. Now, except for benefiting every creature, you must not think of anything else. For my sake, I should not do anything with these eyes and so forth. I have left completely at the disposal of others. It is quite incorrect to do anything with them which is contrary to the benefit of others. In other words, we should try to think more, especially when we are with others, of others, not of ourselves. That's all it means. So many people are tortured by the fact that when they're with others, they're always thinking, what are they thinking about me? Oh, who cares? First of all, we never can know, and secondly, who cares anyway? It's not important what other people think. But from our side, whoever we are with at that moment is the most important person in the world, because that's the person we're with. So our one thought should be, may these beings be well and happy. And anything I can do at this moment to make them feel good, may I do that. And if we just smile, if we say hello, when people are talking to us, we listen to them. At that moment, they are the most important because they are there. And like us, they wish to be well, they wish to be happy. So even just by giving them our attention, if it makes them that little happier, then that's good. So he's saying we should give ourselves to thinking about others, not endlessly thinking me. The importance is all these other beings who wish, like me, to be happy, so why not try giving ourselves to the task of making them happy? Very easy, it's obvious, really, logic. Thus, sentient beings should be my main concern. Whatever I behold upon my body, I should rob and use for the benefit of others. In other words, if we get something, instead of holding it to ourselves, we should say, would you like this? Considering lesser beings and so forth as myself, and considering myself as the other, and in the following way I should meditate upon envy, competitiveness, and self-importance, with a mind free of distorted concepts. Now, you have to understand the scenario, otherwise you'll be very puzzled. he is now going to put himself in the place of another and address himself as if he was the other. Do you understand? He's going to step out of his role and project himself into the other person in various levels, and from that other person's standpoint, address himself as the other. Right? Do you understand? So he's starting first with an inferior person. He's putting himself in the place of someone who would normally be regarded as an inferior and talking back to himself as the other. Then he's going to put himself in the place of somebody who's more or less equal rank, how they feel about himself. And then someone who is superior looking down on him. Right? So when he's talking, when he says I, when he says he means himself, right? But he is putting himself in the place of another person, looking back. So that other person is addressing Shantideva as he, right? And Shantideva is taking the role of the other person, looking back at himself. Got it? Okay, we'll try. Okay, so when he says he means Shantideva. Okay? And when he says I, he means the other person who he's now changed places with. Right? So he's starting from somebody who is regarded as lower than himself, inferior to himself. And so he says, he is honored and I am not. I have not found wealth such as he. He is praised, but I am despised. He is happy, and I suffer. I have to do all the work while he remains comfortably at ease. He is renowned as great in this world, but I as inferior with no good qualities at all. But what do you mean I have no good qualities? I have all good qualities. Compared to many, he is inferior. And compared to many, I am high. So the inferior person is thinking, well, actually I'm not so inferior. There are people more inferior than me. And what means that he's so high? There are people who are higher than he is. Do you understand the logic? So he's saying, this inferior person is saying, why am I saying I've got no good qualities? I do have good qualities. It's not so special. Other people are much better than him. The deteriorated state of my morals and views is not due to me, but due to my disturbing conceptions, to my kleshas. In whatever way he is able, he should heal me. Willingly, I shall accept any discomfort involved. But I am not being healed by him. So why does he belittle me? What use are his good qualities to me? Although he has good qualities, he does not benefit me. With no compassion for beings who dwell in the poisonous mouth of evil realms, externally he is proud of his good qualities and wishes to put down the wise. So the person who is inferior is envious of someone who appears higher than themselves. So at the same time they're asking, well, he has these good qualities, why isn't he helping me? He thinks he's so special, but actually he's not doing anything to help my position. He's just being very arrogant. So what kind of person is that? In what way is he superior? If he was superior, he would want to help me. But he doesn't want to help me. So much for him. That's what he's saying. Then he is looking to somebody who is equal to himself, right? So now somebody equal. In order that I may excel, he who is regarded as equal with me, I shall definitely strive to attain material gain and honor myself, even by such means as verbal dispute. By all means, I shall make clear to the entire world all the good qualities I have, but I shall not let anyone hear of any good qualities he may have. Also, I shall hide all my faults. I will be venerated, but not him. I will find great deal of material gain, and I will be honored, but he shall not. For a long time I shall look with pleasure at his being made inferior, and he will become the laughing stock of all, regarded among everyone as an object of scorn and derision. So that's competition, right? Where people are more or less the same qualities, then they want to put down their rivals and exalt themselves. So they will do everything they can to hide their own faults, exalt their own virtues, and at the same time expose the faults of others and not say anything about their good qualities. It's this attitude of competition and rivalry. I mean, you see it in everywhere, but especially in businesses and, among work companions. Sometimes people, they do everything they can to put themselves ahead and stamp down anybody else who looks like they could be in competition with themselves. So this is what Shantideva is saying. He's in a monastery, right? So he's probably thinking about the monastic, those who are less than him, who are envious, but they think, well, he's not helping me, he's not doing anything, he's not teaching me, he's not helping me in any way to rise up, so why should I respect him? And then people who are equal to him, they're doing everything to get ahead and putting him down. So like this also, this sense of competition among equals. And now he's doing it from the point of view of someone who is superior, and he's looked down on as the inferior. It is said that this deluded one is trying to compete with me. But how can he be equal with me in learning, intelligence, form, class, or wealth? Thus, upon hearing of my good qualities that have been made well known to all, I shall thoroughly enjoy the satisfaction of the pleasant tingling sensation that occurs. Oh, I'm so wonderful. Even though he has some possessions, if he is working for me, I shall give him just enough to live on, and by force I'll take the rest. His happiness and comfort will decline, and I shall always cause him harm. For hundreds of times in this circle of rebirth, he has caused harm to me. So, again, people in position do often what they can to keep down others who look like they might also come up. So they stamp on them, they look down on them, they exploit them, and they cause great misery. So whether we're inferior, equal, or superior, we cause problems. And so he's imagining that happening back to himself in order to cut down his self-importance, his feeling of, the world revolves around me. Because of desiring to benefit yourself, O mind, he's back to himself again, all the weariness you have gone through over countless past eons has only succeeded in achieving misery. So we work so hard. We work so hard to be happy. We do everything we can to try to make ourselves feel secure and content and satisfied. People work morning to night with the hope that somehow this is going to bring about a state of enduring happiness and satisfaction. And we've been doing this lifetime after lifetime, endlessly scrambling along in samsara, trying so hard to make things work. But it doesn't work. Even if we're happy for a little bit, it's still very insecure because everything is impermanent. However much we gain, there is also loss. However much we come together, we also have to part. Endlessly. From a Buddhist perspective, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Endlessly going through it again and again and again and again. No end in view. Until we wake up. As long as we're sleeping, the sleep of ignorance, we're going to have to go through the treadmill again and again and again. And there's no end because it's a wheel. Wheels don't, in Asian thought, everything is circular. You know, in Abrahamic thought, there's a beginning and so there's an end. But in Asian thought, there is not. It's a wheel. So you keep going round and round and round. There's no beginning, no ending. Beginningless and endless until you break the wheel. So, he is saying, therefore, because I've done this, all the weariness of mind, talking to himself, all the weariness you've gone through countless past eons, have only succeeded in achieving misery. Therefore, I shall definitely engage myself in working for the benefit of others. For since the words of the Mighty One, as the Buddha, are infallible, I shall behold its advantages in the future. If in the past I had practiced this act of exchanging myself for others, a situation such as this, devoid of the magnificence and bliss of a Buddha, could not possibly have come about. Therefore, just as I have come to hold as I those drops of sperm and blood of others, the parents, likewise, through acquaintance, I should also regard all others. In other words, the sense of, because, forget about, blood and sperm and bodies. Our minds are very, very similar in that all of us wish for well-being and wish to avoid things which are distressing and painful for us. As we said this morning, even animals and insects feel like that. So we have so much more in common than we would think. Our brain patterning and our minds and the way we think, despite all our culture and our different nationalities and races and genders, are surprisingly similar. And therefore, looking at our own needs and our own thoughts, we can see that reflected in the eyes of all of the beings. We're really not that different. So just as I wish to be happy and avoid suffering, every single being wants to, the monkeys up there, they want to be happy, they don't want to suffer. The birds, the fish, the insects, the dogs, anybody, and the people, all beings, in their heart, just want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. Nobody enjoys, you could be a masochist, but even that masochism gives you pleasure. They do it for that reason, right? People are weird. I'm not saying they're not weird, but nonetheless, it is all because it makes them think that they will feel good. They feel better. So recognizing that in ourselves, we can see the whole beings. Look in the eyes of beings. It's all very, very just reflections of our own innate needs. So therefore, what makes me so special that we cannot be more concerned with so many, many beings out there and only one of me? Why am I so important? If we, as he said at the beginning, if we really want happiness, then we have to give our lives to bringing happiness for others. That will bring us happiness. If we're only thinking of our own happiness, we're going to be miserable. So, we can at least, as the Dalai Lama says, forget all this philosophy and all this meditation. Try just cultivating a good heart. Or another Lama says, Just try being a good human being. How about that? If we all had a good heart and were good human beings, this would be a different planet. We can't even manage that much. Yes, we can. We can all manage to cultivate a good heart. Having thoroughly examined myself to see whether I am really working for others or not, I shall steal whatever appears on my body and use it for the benefit of others. I am happy, but others are sad. I am high, though others are low. I benefit myself, but not others. Why am I not envious of myself? Look, I'm okay, but others are not okay, right? I'm okay, I'm doing quite well. Others are much more suffering and more difficult. I look after myself. Why don't I feel, wow, isn't that a lucky person? Look, they've got so much compared with everybody else. So we can be envious of ourselves, thinking, wow, they're lucky, meaning oneself. I must separate myself from happiness and take upon myself the sufferings of others. Why am I doing this now? In this way, I shall examine myself for faults. What am I doing? How am I living my life? How much are we really benefiting other beings? How much am I totally self-absorbed with my own desires and pleasures and progress? How much are we genuinely concerned with the well-being of others? We can look at our own minds. Although others may do something wrong, I should transform it into a fault of my own. But I should do something even slightly wrong. I shall openly admit it to many people. This is in order that we don't become hypocritical, that we are honest with our own faults. And if we have faults, which we all do, if we admit them, then they don't grow. If we hide them, and only talk about our virtues, then our thoughts will grow like something underground, it becomes very powerful. So it's very important also in the Dharma life to have integrity and to be honest and truthful and not be hypocritical. By further describing the renown of others, I should make it outshine my own. Just like the lowest kind of servant, I should employ myself for the benefit of all. So again, when you see people doing something good, we should let everybody know about it. Publish it. Wow, they did this, they did that, they're doing this, they're doing that. Rejoicing in the goodness of others. And not discussing anything about your own qualities, which are unimportant compared with the beautiful qualities of others. So, I should let it outshine my own. Whatever other people are doing is wonderful. And just like the lowest kind of servant, I should employ myself for the benefit of all. I should not praise my naturally fault-ridden self for some temporary good quality it may have. I shall never let even a few people know of any good qualities I may possess. We have to be a bit careful about these kinds of advice. It doesn't mean that we spend all our time, he's like, a well-known scholar in a big monastery, and despite the myths about him, he probably had a lot of people really thinking he was fantastic, and he probably thought he was fantastic too. So in that case, it's very important to look at your faults and not praise yourself. But if you have very low self-esteem and are always criticizing yourself, then it is not helpful to only look at your faults and never look at your good qualities too, because then we only get discouraged and we think we can't do anything because our faults become magnified and any good qualities are overlooked. It's like a garden. If you think of garden of the heart, then as in a garden, you pull out the weeds. But we also have to water the good plants. right? We don't shove the good plants in the corner in the shade so that they can't grow. We have a garden so that it should be full of good plants. So we have to keep it weeded. But at the same time, we have to water and fertilize the good plants. The Buddha said that not only do we have loving kindness and compassion, we also have this empathetic joy which rejoices in goodness. And the first person we apply that to is ourselves. That we have to appreciate the goodness and encourage more and more. Like a beautiful flower, we give it water and sunshine and fertilize it, will grow more and more, while remembering to pull out the weeds. So, this kind of advice is okay if you happen to be the abbot of some famous monastery. But if you are one of those people nowadays who have very low self-esteem and are always criticizing yourself, then you should also appreciate your goodness and encourage that also to grow. Because that goodness can be put for the benefit of others. Right? So, for example, if we are like, maybe we get very irritated and angry very easily, and we can recognize, I have a sort of angry temperament, and then we look at the antidotes to anger and try to work on that. That's our practice, is how to transform our anger into loving kindness and patience and so forth. That's part of our practice. But at the same time as having an angry temperament, I'm also quite generous. And so then we can recognize that. Well, yes, I'm angry, but I like to give to others. I like to, share with everybody else. So this is a good quality which comes easily for me. I will do more of that. I will cultivate how to be even more generous, more kind, more open-hearted. So along with, as I say, pulling out the weeds, we also have to encourage the good flowers. The things which are virtuous and easy for us, we can make them grow more and more and more. So we shouldn't only look at what is wrong with us, we also should appreciate what is good. Do you understand? I mean, it's important, because nowadays so many people suffer from low self-esteem, they read these texts and feel even worse. And it doesn't help. We have to believe in ourselves and our own potential. As Shantideva himself says, we have to have self-confidence. We have to believe we are capable of walking the path, because we do have good qualities as well as problems and difficulties. Everybody has problems and difficulties. It's not this, it's something else. But everybody also has goodness. And that goodness, whatever it may be, is aligned with our true nature. The weeds are adventitious. The weeds we can get rid of. But the good plants come from a very deep source within us and are a reflection of our true nature. So therefore, we should polish those and help them to grow more and more healthy. So we end up with a very beautiful garden. Not a desert where we pulled out all the weeds and neglected all the good plants, so they've died too. Right? We're supposed to grow a beautiful garden full of beautiful plants. So we have to say thank you, plants. So, where are we? I should naturally not praise my naturally forward-ridden self for some temporary good qualities. But, even if you don't boast about your good qualities for other people, you should at least acknowledge yourself that there are some good qualities and they can grow more and more and more. In brief, for the sake of living creatures, may all the harms I have selfishly caused for others descend upon me myself. I should not be dominating and aggressive, acting in a self-righteous, arrogant way. Instead, like a newly married bride, I should be bashful, timid, and restrained. Indian brides. Indian brides traditionally, of course, they are very timid because they go into the husband's household. Yeah. They're the least member in that household. And in order to placate their in-laws, especially their mother-in-law and sister-in-laws, they act like the lowest of servants. Yeah. so that they will be approved of. So traditionally they would be very nervous, very quiet, very bashful, like that. They certainly would not be arrogant and boastful. So that's what he's comparing, that we should be very nyanchung. We should be very humble. Thus, O mind, you should think and abide in this way, and not act selfishly as before. If under the control of self-cherishing you transgress this code, your selfishness will be your end. However, mind, although you have been advised, if you do not act in a like manner, since all misfortunes will entrust themselves to you, you will be only destined to destruction. He's talking to his mind. That previous time when you could overcome me is now past. Now I see your nature and faults, and wherever you go, I shall destroy your arrogance. I should immediately cast aside all thoughts to work for my own sake. By having sold you to others, I shall not become discouraged, but shall offer up all of your strength to others. He's talking to himself. If, having become unconscientious, I do not give you to all living beings, it is certain that you will deliver me to the guardians of hell. In other words, if we are totally self-preoccupied, only thinking about ourselves and our own benefits, in the end we'll end up doing all sorts of things we shouldn't do and making a lot of really negative karma, wasting this lifetime, and maybe next lifetime going down to the lower realms. So having recognized the problem, we should right now, from now on, really be there as living our lives not only to benefit ourselves, but especially to be of benefit to others. For ages you have dealt with me like this, and I have suffered long. But now, recalling all my grudges, I shall overcome your selfish thoughts. Likewise, if I wish to be happy, I should not be happy with myself. And similarly, if I wish to be protected, I should constantly protect all others. As we said at the beginning, this might sound extreme, but in general, the happy people that I meet in this life are always people who have done something useful with their lives to help others. Then they have a delight because they have brought happiness in their life. If we are only totally preoccupied with our own welfare and well-being, we end up feeling very dissatisfied, and often life at the end of the time seems pretty meaningless. What was all that about? So what he's saying, although he puts it in a very extreme form, is true. If we spend our lives trying to bring happiness to others, we feel happy. If we're only concerned with others bringing happiness to me, then we're going to be very dissatisfied and disappointed. So it's actually very practical common sense that he's talking here. To whatever degree I take great care of this body, to that degree I fall into a state of extreme helplessness. Having fallen in this way, if my desires are unable to be fulfilled, even by everything upon this earth, what else will be able to satisfy them? People who are concerned only with their own well-being and with their own pleasures. It's, as the Buddha said, like drinking salty water. The more we drink, the more thirsty we become. And we see that in this modern world. Everybody has so much. Compared with centuries past, we are all living better lives than the Emperor of China. If you look at the way that the Emperor of China lived, it looked pretty uncomfortable, actually, compared to the luxury which everybody now enjoys. And yet we're still not satisfied. We still want more, and more, and more, and more, and more. And we're getting increasingly frustrated, increasingly dissatisfied, increasingly desperate. So, this is a time to say, well, something's gone wrong somewhere. Maybe we should change our orientation from endlessly trying to satisfy our own desires to really thinking, how can I live this life to be of benefit for others? Doesn't mean we ignore ourselves, but our real delight is in bringing joy to others. Then that gives a sense of real deep satisfaction, not the trivial, impermanent satisfaction of fulfilling all our desires, which can never be fulfilled anyway. Pleasure is very, very transitory, and after a while becomes very jaded. But the joy of seeing joy in others never fades. It's a very deeply satisfying delight, to delight in the happiness of others and bringing happiness for others as much as possible. So if we change our orientation from me, to thinking of everyone else, then we find suddenly, hey, guess what? I feel okay. I feel good. So even though his language might seem a little archaic, what he's saying is true. That genuinely, if we want happiness, then we must think for the happiness of others. If we want to suffer, we only think about our own happiness, because that's never going to work. Being unable to fulfill them, even desiring to do so, disturbing conceptions and a dissatisfied mind will ensure. But if I do not depend on material things, the exhaustion of my good fortune will be unknown. Therefore, I shall never create an opportunity for the desires of the body to increase. For whatever I do not grasp as attractive, these are the best of all possessions. In the end, my body will turn to dust. Unable to move by itself, it will be propelled by other forces. Why do I grasp this unbearable and unclean form as I? Whether it lives or whether it dies, what use is this machine to me? How is it different from a clod of earth? And why do I not dispel the pride of being I and mine? Having accumulated suffering for no purpose, because of my honoring and serving this body, what use is attachment and anger for this thing that is similar to a piece of wood? If our mind is not there, we're a corpse. Whether I am caring for my body in this way, or whether it's being eaten by vultures, it has no attachment or hatred towards these things. So why am I so attached to it? If my body knows no anger when derided and no pleasure when praised, for what reason am I wearing myself out like this? But I want this body of mine, both it and I are friends. But since all beings want their bodies, why do I not find joy in their bodies? Therefore, in order to benefit all beings, I shall give up this body without attachment. And although it may have many faults, I shall look after it while experiencing the results of my previous actions. So, enough of this childish behavior. I shall follow in the steps of the wise, and having recalled the advice concerning conscientiousness, being careful and clear and mindful, I shall turn away from sleep and mental dullness. Like the compassionate sons of the conqueror, I shall patiently accept what I have to do, for if I do not make a constant effort day and night, when will my misery ever come to an end? Therefore, in order to dispel the obscurations, I shall withdraw my mind from mistaken ways and constantly place it in equipoise upon the perfect object. Amen. Okay, so we will look at the questions. Do we have questions? Okay, we had some before we were positive at some point. Thank you. So we all need to develop a good heart, okay? A soft, sweet heart. That's what we need to develop. Can interconnectedness of consciousness be achieved in a capitalist society, or is it a system that benefits the few at the expense of the majority, and what is the balance? Well, our sense of interconnectedness has nothing to do with the society in which we are living. It has to do with our direct realization of the fundamental nature of our consciousness, which by its nature is interconnected. We are interconnected. We don't understand that. We don't realize that. And of course, our capitalist society makes us, even on our surface consciousness, more and more alienated, which is why people suffer very much now. But nonetheless, wherever we may be in a capitalist community, a communist community, or any community in the whole world, our fundamental nature is interconnected. And if we recognize that directly, we don't have to think we are interconnected. We just recognize that. We know we are interconnected. And it's as soon as we make use of our conceptual dualistic mind that it creates a separation of self and others. But this is our delusion. Really, we are meditating not in order just to be calm and peaceful and so forth. That is just the very, very first stage. Really, what we're trying to do is to go beyond our gross conceptual mind consciousness to the more subtle consciousness of awareness, of mindfulness, of the ability to observe the mind instead of being swept away by the mind. But even that mindfulness is, although it's a more subtle consciousness than our conceptual mind, it's still a dualistic consciousness, because there is still an observer and an observed. But it acts like a bridge to a very deep level of ultimate consciousness, which is beyond dualism. So it's called empty because you can't, like space, you can't put labels on it. But it's not just empty, like space, because it knows. It's the fundamental quality that we know. We are aware. The fact that you can hear and see me is because we have that innate knowing quality of the mind, which is described as being luminous clarity. So our mind is not just empty, it's also luminous clarity. But we cover it over with all our conceptual thinking mind. We have to get back to that, and when we are there, then there is no self and other, there is only the interconnection. We recognize that all beings, we all share within this great luminosity of consciousness, which is our true nature. It's who we really are. But we don't know that. And so we suffer. It's like, when we're asleep, then we wake up and we think, oh, that was just a dream. Well, at the time, the dream seemed very vivid. And, even the body responds to its dreams. If it's a frightening dream, the heart beats. If it's a nice dream, then we feel all soft and warm. But when we wake up, we think, oh, that was just a dream. And we think now we're awake. But compared with the illuminated consciousness, we're still asleep. Therefore, the texts say it's our ordinary distorted consciousness, which we see things, is like an illusion, like a mirage, like a rainbow, like a dream. We think it's real, but it's actually all these things are brought together by causes and conditions. Beyond that is the awakened state. The word Buddha is from the word Bud, which means to awake. So we wake up, and suddenly we recognize that our ordinary consciousness is almost like a dream state. We don't see things how they really are. We just see the way we project them through our distorted lens of our consciousness. So it's not a matter of which society we're born in. It's a matter of whether we wake up or don't wake up. And nobody can wake us up. We have to wake ourselves. I mean, they can help to point it out, but in the end, each one of us has to awaken. And that's why we practice. And then we recognize that all these things that they're saying is true, actually. It's not just some kind of fantasy. It's our true nature, but we don't know it. And that's why it's very sad. Because we're scrambling round and round and round, and we don't know how to get out. How can we begin to taste what it is to know the power of realizing the nature of the mind? Well, that's a good question. In a Nyingma system, normally the way to recognize the nature of the mind first is to go to someone and have it pointed out. I mean, that is one of the functions of a genuine Lama, is that they are able to point out the nature of the mind. It doesn't mean that then that's it, you're finished. It's the beginning. My Lama, he said, when you realize the nature of the mind, then you start to meditate. Because, as I said, usually we look in the sky, there's all the clouds, suddenly the clouds part, there's the sky, boom, back to clouds. But now we know there's a sky, right? So then the point is to learn how to get the clouds to part more often and longer and further and further and further. And when we are living totally 24 hours sleep and awake in the state of clear blue skies, then we're awake. So the first step is to just get that glimpse. Even in the Theravada system, the same. There's a glimpse of nirvana, which is called entering the stream. And then there are corresponding longer and deeper realizations. But the initial breakthrough, in Zen also, it's called Kensho or Satori, that initial breakthrough, then suddenly you see it. Now you know it's not just words. Now you understand, yes, but of course the ego takes over. Now I'm nearly enlightened. I shall set myself up as a Lama and tell everybody how to recognize the nature of their mind. So, in our monastery back in Tashijong, in our Kampaka monastery, our monastery were very well known for what are called tokdens, which mean realized ones. And there they go into retreat, and they are taught, of course, by the senior tokdens, but they stay in retreat 15, 20 years. And they grow their hair, they get dreadlocks, but they still wear monastic robes. They're monks. Until that time when it is considered that their realization is stabilized. At the time when it's regarded that their realization of the nature of the mind is stabilized, then they are given white skirts and the stripes end. Until then, not. So I compare it to like if you're baking a cake and you put the cake in a hot oven, close the door, the cake will quickly rise. And then we think, oh look, the cake's cooked, and we take it out, but it's only half cooked, so it will collapse and be extremely gooey and disgusting, worse than before. But if we leave it in, then it will cook all the way through. And then when we take it out the oven, it will not collapse. It will be absolutely delicious and nourishing. So it's like that. People get glimpses, experiences, even realization, and they think that's it. But that's just the beginning. You haven't cooked all the way through. You're only half cooked. Somebody wrote a book called Halfway Up the Mountain about all these people who think they're gurus and enlightened. I never ever heard any Lama say, I am enlightened. I mean, I think I'd walk out the door immediately. I never heard anybody say, I am enlightened. They all say, I'm walking the path like you. We're all the same. But the initial breakthrough is very, very helpful. Because then at least we know, yes, I have it, it's there. All we need now is to keep developing, cultivating, to recognize our true nature, which we all share, which is why we're interconnected. We have nuns in our nunnery who have now finished 10 years retreat, and they are training to become Tokden Ma, because my Lama Kamta Rinpoche one time very officially said that in Tibet there were many Tokden Ma, but now that lineage has died out because of the takeover of Tibet. And he said, so I always pray that you will restore this lost female lineage. So the nunnery, from my point of view, is like a container for the nectar. And the nectar is our nuns who are so diligently and so wholeheartedly practicing to become Tokden Ma. If I don't have a Lama, oh yes, who will point out the nature of the mind? Is it useful to meditate on non-conceptual spaciousness if you know what you're doing? I mean, you don't have to have a Lama who is your Lama. There are certain Lamas who are skilled in pointing out the nature of the mind. And you can go and receive that pointing out instruction. In fact, all Lamas that I've known who gave the pointing out instructions, many of them were my Lamas. Certain Lamas are skilled in being able to do this. And so you can find out who is that and go. The important thing with all these practices is that we need to actually hit the vital point and not just make up our own version of what we should be doing. We should have to be very clear about how to do it. Otherwise we just waste our time. Because all these instructions are very specific and we need to understand how to do it properly. Then we can feel that something inside us is actually transforming. Otherwise, we might end up doing things which are not beneficial for the mind also. So we need to know very clearly what to do. And there are many teachings nowadays to help us. So, but I would say go to somebody who is, considered really an authentic teacher. It doesn't have to be your heart guru forever and ever, but it can be somebody who can just point out. One time, a friend of mine, she was an old nun, an English nun, and she was at the Lama dances many years ago. She was at the Lama dances, the Guru Rinpoche dances in our monastery. And at that time, my Lama, before he died, he was a very good dancer. And so he was part of the black hat dance, and she was just sitting there watching. I mean, she was nothing to do with him at all, she just turned up. And as he turned round, he looked straight at her, and at that moment, everything dropped away, and she realized the nature of the mind. And I mean, he just kept on dancing. And I mean, he was not her Lama, but from then, her whole Dharma life changed. Because at that moment, she was obviously watching with openness and devotion. So in that openness, he could give her the pointing out instruction. If you're closed, even the greatest Lama can't give it. Trungpa Rinpoche said it was like a corridor in which there are two doors on either side, on either end. The Lama's door is always open, but whether our door is open or closed depends on our devotion. So if our mind at that moment is open, then you get it. If it's closed, even the greatest Lama, the Buddha himself, couldn't give you. We do solitary retreat and visualization practice. At a certain point, what we visualize is not just part of our practice, that becomes a reality. We see deities, etc. What to do? Just watch? Yes. Realize that all of these are just nyam. They're just experiences. I mean, it's nice, but don't take it for real. I mean, on one level, all beings are deities. Right? The deity isn't something existing from its own side. We all are deities. So if one sees oneself as a deity, that's wonderful, but we should recognize all beings are deities. We just don't recognize. I mean, that's the point of Tantra, is to recognize that, what we are striving for, we already have. So don't make a Disney movie out of it. Right? It's all a projection of our own mind. My dearly beloved went to Switzerland for assisted suicide because he had a terminal illness. He studied many spiritual paths but ultimately considered himself a Buddhist. Will his suicide be detrimental to a fortunate rebirth? A lot depends. Of course, I'm not saying that we should have assisted suicides. I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but that is a personal decision. Who can say? The important thing is the state of mind at the time of dying. And if at the time of dying his mind was in a positive state, maybe devotion to the teachers, devotion to the Dharma, aspiration to be reborn soon in order to reconnect with the path again, then I don't think it necessarily is negative. It depends what was happening at the time when he died. If he died suddenly with fear or with regrets or some negative state of mind, then for all of us that would not be a good thing. But if he died in a very positive state of mind, with genuine aspirations to carry on following the path as soon as possible in his next life, then personally, I don't think that that is so negative, even though it is taking life. But that's only my own opinion. Traditionally, normally people couldn't do that sort of thing, so there isn't much guidance on this. But the important thing is, what is our state of mind at the time of passing on? And if our intention was in order to be able to take a new birth in order to practice the Dharma properly, then I'm not sure that it was all that negative, and I wouldn't worry. But of course, any prayers for his well-being is good. And in general, don't do that. Okay? But, who's to say? I'm not the one to say. Somebody who could follow his consciousness would be able to tell you, not me. Are the jhanas of the Theravada different from those in Tibetan traditions? No, the jhanas are jhanas. But in the Tibetan tradition in general, they're not very emphasized, especially nowadays. Certainly in, I don't know, in the Gelugpa tradition, but certainly in the Nyingma Kagyu tradition, some basis in shamatha is very good. But by the time you get to the entry into the jhanas, that's enough. And they say, life is too short, go on, that's not going to save you. And everybody agrees, the jhanas cannot liberate you. But they can make your mind very powerful and strong. These are the mental meditation absorptions, firstly for form and formless, deep meditation absorptions, where the mind becomes extremely clear, extremely powerful, anything we put our mind to is absolutely straight clear. So if we are naturally capable of being in these jhanas and it doesn't take too long, then that is fantastic, because then your mind is an incredible instrument to be used, like a very, very sharp scalpel for a surgeon to use. But because nowadays our minds are so distracted and so full of junk, it takes an awfully long time normally for people to enter into the jhanas. Our minds are too busy. Therefore, certainly among the lamas I know, they all say that's not important now. just get your mind to the point where it's clear and focused and able to be settled on the object of meditation. That's enough. Too much shamatha might even be detrimental, they feel, especially the Dzogchen masters. So, in general, I don't know any Tibetan lamas who teach the jhanas. Not nowadays, at least. They usually say we should go in for insight into the nature of the mind. But if you can do jhanas, then of course, then the mind is very powerful. And anything that one does with that mind will certainly get results very quickly. And so, like in Burma and maybe in Thailand, there are some teachers who teach going into all the jhanas first. But it takes an awfully long time usually. The first and second jhana would be good if you can manage it. Do you believe in other beings on other planets? Why not? I mean, if you consider the whole universe, how vast it is, it's hard to believe we're the only people here. I mean, they might not look anything like we can imagine. You know, our imagination of what other alien forms would look like are always weird, and invariably they're more intelligent and less beautiful than we are. But they might be in all sorts of we cannot imagine, because the different elements in the different planets and different universes would create different kinds of sentient life. And I think probably within us, our karmic cycle is only in this planet. I doubt if we could get reborn in Mars, for example, or further away in the galaxy. But nonetheless, I'm sure there are many, many other sentient beings out there that we have no idea about. And if they've got any sense at all, they'll leave us alone. I mean, that's maybe their intelligence that they do leave us alone. Let them get on with it. We've messed up enough. Do you see much value in the academic study of Buddhism? I ask because I'm thinking of taking a graduate degree in Buddhist studies. I'm not sure if it's a good or useful thing to do. Could it help others? I think it all depends who and what. I think if you're young and you enjoy studies, then of course it's very, very good to have a clear academic understanding of Buddhist philosophy, undoubtedly. No, it's good. But if you are somewhat older, then I would say, unless you really love it, don't bother. Because why? Because life is very short. And as we get older, it's more difficult to change the mind. It's easier to practice while you're younger. And it's not necessary to know all the minutiae of Buddhist philosophy. If you understand the basic principles, that's enough. I'm not just speaking for myself. Milarepa, for example, was not a geshe. Right? In fact, a geshe was the one that tried to poison him. But geshe didn't mean a degree in those days, it just meant a teacher. I mean, I think if you're young, then learn Tibetan, do an academic study, fantastic. I'm not in any way, I mean, all our nuns have to study. I'm not against study, please believe me. But if we are already highly educated, all this academic study is their education, right? You start when you're young and you learn all the Buddhist philosophy, that's education. But we already have an education. You can sit down and read a book and you can, with a bit of application, understand it. Which a Tibetan left to themselves could not do. They have to be trained how to read a book and understand it. We don't need that. I am with some copper behind me. to see Chuchang Rinpoche. Chuchang Rinpoche was the junior tutor of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Very great scholar. And at that time I was quite young. And he said to me, first question, who's your Lama? So I said, come to Rinpoche. Ah, Kaju. Yes, well, the thing with the Kajus is they practice. That's the thing with the Kajus. Then he turned to his secretary and he said, at the time of death, what will benefit us most? A head full of book knowledge or genuine realization in the heart? And he said, we all study too much. Not necessary. He said, read 3 books, try to understand them, then go away and realize it. Oh. The 3 books he recommended, lest you wonder, because I was Kaju, was the Dato Tajin, the Jewel Ornament of Liberation by Gampopa, the Bodhisattva, and, interestingly, the Shiksha Samuchaya, which is interesting, which is a compilation of Mahayana Sutras by Shantideva. And he said, just read that, try to understand it, then go away and realize it, because that's what's going to benefit you in this lifetime and at the time of death. So that, of course, I was a Westerner, I was a nun, at a time when nuns were not educated, and, he probably could say I wasn't going to be a scholar. I doubt if he said that to his students. But he did say it. And I think that, in general, it's true. We don't have much time. And we do need to genuinely gain realization, because that's what's going to help us in the end. So, both. We can study and we also should practice. I mean, in our nunnery, we combine the two. The nuns do a meditation every morning along with their pujas, and they study all day, and then in the monsoon, they do a 2-month silent retreat. So they all learn to practice, and some of them then go into long retreats. Some of them during their holiday do retreats. They understand. We bring in also teachers to teach them how to meditate properly. And the Khenpos from our monastery down the road, Tashijong, they also come to teach the nuns how to do things properly, how to meditate properly, how to do their pujas properly. They take them very seriously. And so I think that the two together is really very, very good to both study and also to cultivate the mind, so that the two go together and they're not in opposition to each other. Or the idea that you have to study for 20 years, then you can meditate. I mean, that's nonsense. Geshes who, after all their studies, then seriously enter into retreat because their minds are so well trained, are exemplary practitioners, there is no doubt. But most of us, they started when they were 10 years old. Most of us are not 10 years old when we start. And so we don't have that much time. So to understand enough of the Dharma that we understand what is Dharma, what is not Dharma, beyond that, realize something, transform the mind. And really get confidence so that we can die knowing we have understood the Dharma inwardly, intuitively, not just up in the head, because the up in the head bit will go. That we're not carrying that with us. What we're carrying with us will be our genuine realization. And so that's what we have to put the emphasis on. And so if we're young, yes, by all means there's a bit of time maybe, but as we get older and more mature, then I don't know that we need to do very long study programs. What we need is to really get down to actual experience and realization, because who knows how long we all have. So that's my version. It is said that to disturb another person's mind is to harm them. I feel to speak is always a disturbing other people's mind on a subtle level. How to reconcile this? It's just to say silent, okay, and good for practice. Well, if we speak good words, I mean, what disturbs people's mind is mindless chatter, and that is part of the discipline, the verbal discipline, is, not only to speak the truth, but also to speak words which are kind and not harmful, not to speak divisive talks which separate people and cause disharmony, and also to abstain from meaningless chatter. So, I mean, most of us are guilty of this, but that disturbs people's minds. If people are trying to cultivate mindfulness and we just go on chattering and giving, our verbal diarrhea, then that is disturbing people's minds. But if we seriously discuss, things of importance, especially, Dharma questions and things which elevate people's minds or stimulate, intellectual understanding, then that's not disturbing people's minds. Unless they're all in retreat, of course. I mean, in a retreat center, people maintain noble silence. Or when you're in a meditative environment, you keep noble silence. But in every day, if you're only silent and people talk to you and you go, and turn away, they feel awkward. That disturbs their mind even more. What have I said to upset them? They won't talk to me. But we can speak with mindfulness, conscious of what the effect our words will have on others. And to speak words which are meaningful and helpful is not disturbing other people's mind, it's helping other people's mind. That's why we have language. As human beings, we have this very rare gift of, in a way it's a gift, in a way it's a drawback. I mean, animals communicate without needing language, probably on a much more subtle level than we do. They understand each other perfectly. But we as human beings have language, for better or worse, and so only we need to cultivate skill in our language, so that it doesn't disturb people's minds, that it cultivates people's minds. It depends what we do with it. If we are always striving to help others and make them happy, how can we avoid becoming a doormat and being taken advantage of? Well, on one level, you could be happy to be a doormat. But if you look, you see that the great practitioners are not doormats. They are constantly striving for the benefit of others. But it doesn't mean that they're passive wimps, or that it doesn't mean we're stupid. As with cultivating patience, it doesn't mean that therefore we allow people to take advantage of us or cheat us or, do things which will create bad karma for them. Doesn't mean that. And if we look at the great practitioners, they were not like that at all. To strive for the benefit of others doesn't mean that therefore we have to let everybody just walk all over us and do whatever they like, because that won't help them. And so therefore, no, we don't, that's not what it means. We're not stupid. We can be very strong and very firm. But nonetheless, our motivation is to give benefit to others. And if you allow people just to walk all over you and do bad things, then that's not helping them. I mean, just as, when you're developing patience, it doesn't mean that if people are beating you up, you say, oh yes, beat me more. That doesn't help. It doesn't help them, doesn't help anybody. It's not what it means. We can be very strong, but at the same time compassionate, like Tara. Fearless compassion. You wouldn't treat Tara as a doormat. I tell you, whoa, try it. She's nobody's doormat, but she's total compassion. Okay, do you understand? doesn't mean that we have to be, I mean, I know he uses that language, but I bet if you met Shantideva, he's nobody's doing that. But our motivation is to benefit others. And allowing people just to do whatever they want is not benefiting them. We have to have skill, wisdom, understanding of how to benefit beings. It doesn't mean we're weak, because genuine forbearance and compassion is strong. This is why Tara is such an example, because yes, she's compassionate, but she's fearless compassion. She's strong. And she comes in many forms, and some of her forms are quite wrathful. Sometimes compassion can be quite powerful. It's not weak. Yes, Buddhism, with its emphasis on free will, and on choosing to respond to outer factors closely related to liberalism, or I don't know, than other Western schools of thought. Is there room for systematic criticism and fight for social justice? Yes, certainly there is room for systematic criticism and fight for social justice. But with what motivation? That's the point. If we are fighting for social justice with anger, then that creates more problems. If we are fighting for social justice with wisdom and compassion, then that's something else again. I mean, all these social problems that we have to face, if we try to respond with indignation and anger and conflict, then all we will create is more anger and conflict. This is why we never resolve our social problems, because we come with often the wrong attitude. And so what Buddhism can teach is how to develop the right attitude in order to be able to go forward without creating more conflict. I mean, just recently we had a meeting in Deer Park nearby in Deer of what is called the International Network of Engaged Buddhists. And so this is a group which is centered, this is where I met these two venerable bhikkhus. It is centered mostly in Thailand, but it's an international organization, and it's one of the things they are dealing with is how to deal with the problems which we are facing in the world. What can Buddhism contribute? And so essentially what we hopefully can contribute is our understanding that when things, dealing with difficult politicians, dealing with difficult political situations, dealing with all the problems we have in the world, if we deal with that with paranoia, fear and anger, we are just contributing more paranoia, fear and anger to a world which is already suffocating in that. Doesn't help at all. And so what we need is to have a clear vision of how things are and to work from genuine understanding and compassion and empathy and strength, rather than from plugging in again to these very negative energies which are being put out. So if we approach everything as if we are in conflict and opposing, then it just creates more opposition and conflict. And this is what's happening everywhere, that nobody listens to anybody else, nobody compromises, everybody knows they're right, and therefore everybody else is wrong, and it just creates more of the same. It doesn't act as an antidote to the poison. We're just adding more poison. And so, some mindfulness, some compassion, some understanding, some openness could help. Otherwise, if we come to the table with our agenda, knowing we're in the right and therefore you're wrong, then it's already closed. There's no way that we can hear anybody else. And this is what happens in many countries which are in conflict with each other. Because each side has their own agenda and they're not listening to the other side. They just want to persuade the other side to adopt their agenda. And then it's not going to work. So, I'm not saying Buddhists can solve the world's problems. They can't even solve their own problems. But a little sanity would help. Maybe everybody should do a nice meditation retreat before going to the table to discuss and negotiate. Not truly. Because it's difficult. It's difficult when we know we're right and you're wrong. I mean, I know I'm right, so you must be wrong. We can't both be right because you don't agree with me. And I know I'm right because that's what I think. And my thoughts are true. They're my thoughts. Yeah. Doors closed. When you talk about practice, you talk about meditation, but most of us at home spend most of our time, sometimes we have to, like to learn to live in a relationship like surrounded by social pressures. Is it more difficult to practice than in an environment of retreat? Yes, undoubtedly. This is why the Buddha left home. I mean, we have to be honest. He left home. He never went back. But what we can do, even if we are in a family situation and a social situation, is to recognize that within that situation is a wonderful opportunity to cultivate qualities which we normally would not be able to cultivate if we were in solitude, such as forbearance, generosity, loving kindness, compassion, understanding. These qualities are needed in family life, in relationships, people bringing up children. Endlessly we have opportunities to practice. Maybe you don't have the opportunity to practice jhanas, one-pointed concentration. Okay, let's put that aside for when we have the opportunity. But in the meantime, we can cultivate having a good heart. We can cultivate being more patient and understanding. We can cultivate being more generous. We can cultivate our compassion and loving kindness. It's one thing to sit in meditation thinking, may all beings be well and happy. It's another thing when we have to deal with those beings. So that is our opportunity to practice. There are many qualities of the heart needed for Buddhahood beyond meditation. There are also qualities which we need in order to really bring to fruition our true nature. And that we can definitely do in a social environment. They are all our opportunities for cultivating these qualities. At the same time, if we have an opportunity, then also to do some formal retreat is very helpful, especially retreats which help us to cultivate our ability to be more aware. Then we can take that introduction to our basic awareness back into our daily life, and as much as possible try to cultivate within our daily life the ability to be more mindful and aware. Because awareness, all it means is that we know what we're doing. It's nothing mysterious. We all have it. But normally we don't cultivate it. So the Buddha said, step number 1. When we're walking, we know we're walking. When we're sitting, when we're lying down, when we're standing up, we know. So anybody can do that. The problem is only we forget to do it. So if we're walking along to the kitchen or to the dining room or walking upstairs, we know we're walking. Instead of thinking 10,000 other things, we bring our attention to the body and know at this moment what is happening. Well, I'm walking. And so we are aware of walking. That's it. Nothing mysterious. Thich Nhat Hanh gives a beautiful meditation on washing dishes. He said there are 2 ways to wash dishes. Either you wash dishes to get clean dishes, or you wash dishes to wash dishes. And he said most people, when they're washing dishes, are just thinking of getting clean dishes. While they're washing, they're thinking about, next after this I'll have a cup of coffee and some tea, and then I have to go shopping. And what did they mean when they said yesterday about da-da-da-da-da? And so our mind's in the past, in the future, running around. The one place the mind is not is with the dishes. So after that, we sit down, we have a cup of coffee, and we have a cup of cake, we take a sip, and then we're thinking, now when I go shopping, I need to buy this, I need to buy that. So we drink the coffee, we don't even notice it. And then we're shopping, and then we're thinking the next thing. So all the time, our mind is never where we are. Even with pleasure things, like having a cup of coffee and a nice piece of cake. We're still, our mind for 1 second is on it, and then it's off. So he says, the other way is to wash the dishes, which means while we're washing the dishes, our mind is washing dishes. Right? We are aware of the water, we're aware of the we're just resting the mind. We're not thinking about the dishes, we're just knowing what we are doing in this moment. And as he says, at the end of that, we not only get clean dishes, we get a nice clean mind. And then we sit down for our coffee and our cake, and we are present with the coffee and with the cake. It's so simple. It's so simple, but we do not do it. So it's no question of, I'm too busy to practice. Everybody walks. Everybody climbs up and down stairs. Everybody sits down. Everybody cooks or cleans or washes dishes. The difference is whether during that time our mind is caught up in 10,000 other things, in which case we get exhausted for no purpose, or whether our mind stays where we are and is present and conscious and aware. It's not a matter of time. People always complaining, I'm so busy, I have no time. Nonsense. As long as you're breathing, you have time. Do you understand? It's just a matter of training ourselves how to be present. Because the present is the only time we have. This is why focusing on the breath is useful. Because we cannot breathe in the past. We cannot breathe in the future. We only breathe now. So if we are conscious of the breath coming in and out, we're present. And present is the only time we have. And even as we say present, it's gone. So being mindful isn't some heroic meditational athletic event like going into jhanas. Being mindful just means being present. Normally we're absent. Our mind's all over the place. In the past, in the future, running around the present, never settling. on what's happening here and now without mental comment. Just knowing. And it's like the mind wakes up. And along with that, cultivating our forbearance, our compassion, our kindness, our generosity, our clarity of how to act in response to situations with skill instead of non-skill, being more conscious of what's happening in our mind, what are our mental states, when our states are negative, irritated, annoyed, grasping, greedy, envious, and when our states of mind are positive, kind, calm, clear, knowing what's going on inside. It doesn't take time, but it does take application. We have so used to being unmindful that it takes practice to learn to become more conscious, more aware, more present. But it doesn't take time. It just takes application. Do you think Jesus was a Buddha? And what about Mary Magdalene? Well, I'm not sure that Jesus was a Buddha. I cannot say because we believe no two Buddhas can appear at the same time. But definitely he was a great Bodhisattva. And, what he had to say was really very, very good. Excellent. At least the way it's translated and being handed down to us. Really, he said really genuinely brilliant things. And obviously he was a great being, no doubt. Mary Magdalene, we don't know anything about Mary Magdalene, to be honest. She was a devoted disciple of Jesus. He liked her a lot. And I have no doubt that she was a very devoted disciple of his. She probably was a very interesting woman. She has been, of course, denigrated because she was around and the boys didn't appreciate that. And as happened often in Buddhist stories also, the female always comes out the worst. And of course, there's no evidence whatsoever that she was a loose woman. There's nothing in the Bible which says anything of the sort. And from all we can tell, she was simply a very, very devoted disciple. She was also the person that saw Jesus when he was in the garden. And the other disciples didn't get to see him at that time, only she got to see him. So she obviously was very, very special, but then she got written out of the Bible because, I don't know, maybe she was closer to Jesus than they wanted to admit. Who knows? We don't know. Nothing wrong with her. Nothing in the Bible which says that she was in any way not a very good woman. So, her subsequent bad reputation was simply because they wanted to think that she must have been something. But she wasn't. Why should she be? She was perfectly okay. Nothing against Mary Magdalene. He had lots of Marys in his life. His mother was a Mary. There was another Mary that had a sister Martha. The story of Mary and Martha is very interesting. They were sisters. I don't know if she met that Mary was Mary Magdalene or another Mary. But they were devotees of Jesus. And they invited him to lunch. And Martha was organizing the servants and getting lunch ready. And Mary was just sitting at Jesus' feet, rubbing very expensive oil into his feet with total devotion. And Martha says to Jesus, "Look here, I'm working here trying to get this lunch going, and Mary's just sitting there being completely useless. Will you please tell her to get up and help me?" And Jesus said to Martha, "Martha, what you are doing is very good, but Mary has the better part." Because she was just sitting there quietly with devotion, rubbing his feet with oil. And so this was the basic, the basis of the two kinds of convents in Catholicism. There are the engaged orders who run schools and hospitals and so forth, which are the Marthas. And then there are the contemplatives who only pray, and they're the Marys. And always up until recently, in the Catholic Church, the Marys were always considered to have the better part, because they were praying for the world. And nowadays, also in Catholicism, more the active orders have almost died out, but now the contemplative orders are coming back again. And women, young women also are now beginning again to join the enclosed orders, where they spend most of their time in prayer. One time I was in, one of the many times I was in Israel, we went to visit the convent, the enclosed convent on Mount Carmel, which of course is the Carmelite nunnery, with the enclosed nuns. And we met the Mother Superior there, who was behind a grill, of course. And she said that she was telling us at one time this Israeli family came to visit. And the young man said to her, you know, what are you doing? You're just wasting your life. You know, what do you do here to help anybody? And she said, well, we pray. We pray for Israel and peace in Israel. And he said, well, it hasn't worked, has it? And she said, well, can you imagine it if we weren't praying? And he said, keep on praying. And sometimes I think the only thing that keeps our world together is all these contemplatives around the world who are praying for the best interest of all the world, because their prayers are very important in the negative energy which we're putting out, that there are people in meditation and in prayer praying and sending out light into the world and love into the world, because this world is desperately in need of love and light. And that's what they're doing. They are holding this world together. How do you recognize your heart guru? Your heart recognizes. I am close with the Lama who reveals the path to me and embodies the virtues of compassion and loving kindness, but I can also see his own struggles on the path. He is certainly miles further on the path than me, but he has not realized. Our relationship is also more of equality. Should your heart guru be closer to realization? Well, what can I say? Of course, in the Tibetan tradition, you see your Lama as the Buddha. And naturally, it helps if he is. But I would say that provided that the Lama, even if he is not, I mean, we're all Buddha, essentially, but even if he has not totally realized his Buddha nature, his Buddhahood, he should have realized his Buddha nature, because otherwise he can't help. At least that much he must have realized, not just intellectually, but actually realized his Buddha nature, even if only briefly. But he should have integrity. I would say that is the really important thing. That you can trust him completely, and he will not betray your trust. Because this is what is happening now. We are finding that certain lamas who have, in some ways, very, very good qualities, but on the other hand, they do not have the integrity necessary to be a genuine guru. And this creates tremendous heartbreak. So even if the Lama himself is not completely fully realized, and he admits that, and I don't know, as I say, any Lama who told you, I'm enlightened, I would be very suspicious of any Lama who said, oh, I really know it all. Well, even a Karmapa, the previous Karmapa, 16th Karmapa, he said to me, he was reading something somebody had written. He said, what are they doing? Do they think I'm a Buddha or something? And way he would have described himself as a bodhisattva. He's walking on the path like everyone else. My own Lama said to me, I'm just like you. We're all walking the path. So nothing wrong with someone walking the path who doesn't claim to be a Buddha, provided that you trust that they understand you better than you understand yourself, so that they can truly guide you because they see the path. And I remember Ajahn Chah saying that he asked his students not to discuss what he said to them with each other, because he said if he sees somebody walking on the path and they're turning to the right, he will say, go left, go left. And then if somebody else is going left, he said, go right, go right. So when they meet each other, then they will say, oh, but Rinpoche said go left. And he said, no, he told me to go right. And then they get confused. But he said, you can see which way they need. So that kind of teacher you need, who knows for you what is right. So it might, like one time we were doing this complicated visualization, very, 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 very complicated. And my Dharma sisters, when they went to come to Rinpoche, he said, oh, just see it vaguely, just roughly get the feeling of it, that's enough. So then when I went to get my instruction, we each were taught separately. I said, so I can just see it sort of vague and rough. No, see it very clearly, very accurately. And your mind got very quickly high, he said, just see it very accurate. So obviously I needed to see it very clearly, they need to see it very vaguely. So what you need is someone you can trust, who sees you, how you are, and what you need. And it doesn't matter that they haven't gone completely all the way. At least they've gone further than we have. And we can trust in them and their good intentions towards us and their wisdom in guiding us. That's enough. That's more than enough. If we can find that much, we should rejoice. So I think that's it, I hope. I think that's it. Okay, so we've finished in good time. You will be happy to know, as it's all getting a little dark. Could we ask the monks to lead the dedication? Last week we did the last with a little long life prayer to His Holiness Dalai Lama. Last week we met with His Holiness and he assured us that he intended to live at least another 20 years. So we all pray for that. Yes. So thank you very much. Of course, thank Tushita very much. They keep inviting us to come back and buggle on, and they take care so nicely of everyone, and especially of ourselves, and we are very, very grateful. We all come here, but behind it, there is so much work going on. Everybody there are, they are all involved in bringing about all these events, one after the other, after the other, after the other. So many people coming and always taking care of them all and seeing that everything is presented in an acceptable and happy manner. It's extraordinary. They work so hard for the benefit of the Dharma and for sentient beings. So really, good luck to you. Show. So thank you all very much for all your questions and for your attention, and please, something of all this, I hope even just one line will stay in your heart and that you will take it back with you to wherever your lives are. And meantime, those of you who have an interest, please sit down and read the whole of the Bodhisattva, because it's an incredible paean of praise to the bodhicitta, the aspiration to live our lives for the sake of all beings. So please, all of you who can, please do take away the text, read it, study it, and incorporate it into your lives. So thank you all very much.